Karen stared at her phone screen as the implications crashed over her like a cold wave. The Treasury Department didn't request HOA records for neighborhood disputes. They'd been discovered, and somehow her meticulous community management had connected her to this vault. "We need to move," Marcus said, shoving the last bundles of cash into their bags. "If Treasury is sniffing around your HOA, they've already traced something back to you." "That's impossible," Karen protested, but her mind was racing through every documented interaction she'd had with government entities. The permits, the tax assessments, the complaints she'd filed about municipal services, all of it creating a paper trail that led directly to her doorstep. They climbed back through the storm drain system, emerging 6 blocks from Karen's car. The morning sun felt accusatory as they walked, two middle-aged criminals carrying stolen federal assets in designer gym bags. "My house isn't safe," Karen realized aloud. "They'll search it first." Hotel? Too trackable. Karen's HOA paranoia, usually focused on catching residents with unauthorized lawn ornaments, was now working overtime. "But I know a place." 20 minutes later, they sat in Karen's mother's basement, surrounded by decades of accumulated craft supplies and holiday decorations. Gladys Whitmore, 83 and sharp as ever, served coffee without asking questions about why her daughter had arrived with a strange man and 2 very heavy bags. "Treasury called the house this morning," Gladys said casually, stirring her coffee. "Said they needed to speak with you about community financial records. I told them you were at the early bird yoga class and wouldn't be back until 10. Karen nearly choked on her coffee. "You what?" "Bought you some time, dear. Though I must say, if you're going to take up a life of crime, you might have picked something more lucrative than HOA fraud." Marcus looked between mother and daughter. "She knows." "Honey," I raised Karen. "When she shows up at 7 in the morning with gym bags, she won't let go of a man she won't introduce properly. She's either having an affair or committing felonies. Since she hasn't had a date in 3 years, I went with felonies." Despite everything, Karen felt a surge of affection for her pragmatic mother. "What do we do, Mom?" Gladys set down her cup with the decisive clink of someone who'd made tough decisions for 8 decades. "Well, first we count the money. Then we figure out if what you've done is stupid or brilliant. There's often a fine line." They spread the cash across the craft table, Gladys's expert fingers moving through bills with surprising speed. "Roughly 200,000, she announced. "Not retirement money, but enough to disappear properly if you're smart about it." "Disappear?" Karen's voice cracked. She'd never lived anywhere but Willow Creek. "The alternative is federal prison, dear. Though I suppose you could try explaining to a judge that you stumbled into a government vault while chasing Mrs. Henderson's poodle." Marcus pulled out his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "The vault I was accessing contained funding for off-books operations. If Treasury is moving this fast, it means someone very important is missing their money." "How important?" Karen asked. Marcus's face went pale as he read something on his screen. "The kind of important that makes people disappear permanently." Gladys stood up, suddenly all business. "Pack light. I'm driving you to the bus station. Karen, you're going to visit your cousin in Phoenix. Marcus, I assume you have your own plans. We're splitting up?" Karen felt panic rising. The HOA had been her entire world for so long. She couldn't imagine existing without structure, without rules to enforce. "For now," Marcus said gently. "But this isn't over. That vault contained more than money. It contained evidence of operations that shouldn't exist. Someone's going to want that evidence back, and they're going to keep looking until they find it." As they prepared to leave, Karen caught her reflection in her mother's hallway mirror. The woman staring back looked different, still perfectly coiffed and sensibly dressed, but there was something new in her eyes. Something that hadn't been there during 4 terms of tracking down garbage can violations and unauthorized fence colors. She looked dangerous, and despite everything, she was starting to like it. Karen's hand trembled as she followed the footprints deeper into the vault, her HOA training kicking in. Always investigate suspicious activity thoroughly. The prints led to a section marked Classified Operations in bold red lettering that made her stomach flip with equal parts terror and excitement. "Hello," she called softly, then immediately regretted it. The echo seemed to bounce forever in the cavernous space. A muffled sound came from ahead, papers rustling, someone working quickly. Karen crept forward, using her phone's camera to document everything. If she was going down, she'd take evidence with her. The HOA had taught her that documentation was everything. Around the corner, she spotted him, a man in an expensive suit methodically emptying boxes into a leather briefcase. He worked with practiced efficiency, clearly knowing exactly which boxes to target. This wasn't random theft. This was an inside job. "Excuse me," Karen said in her most authoritative HOA voice. "I don't believe you're authorized to be here." The man spun around, nearly dropping his briefcase. He was younger than expected, maybe 40, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he was as surprised to find someone else here as she was to find him. "Lady, you need to leave. Now." His voice carried the clipped urgency of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I think not," Karen replied, crossing her arms. "I'm documenting violations of federal property, and you, sir, are in direct violation of about 12 laws I can think of off the top of my head." The man's eyes darted to her phone, still recording. "You don't understand what you've stumbled into." "I understand perfectly. You're stealing from a government vault, and I'm a concerned citizen with a civic duty to report criminal activity." Karen stepped closer, her years of confronting code violators making her bolder than wisdom suggested. "The question is whether we can come to a mutually beneficial arrangement." That got his attention. "What kind of arrangement?" Karen gestured to the endless rows of boxes. "You clearly know which boxes contain what. I know how to organize efficient operations and cover tracks. I've been doing it for years with the HOA. We split whatever we find, and we both walk away better off than we came in." The man studied her for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. Do you know how much the HOA pays me? $1,200 a year to manage a community of 200 homes. I'm tired of working for pennies while watching everyone else get rich." He laughed despite himself. "What's your name?" "Karen Whitmore, Willow Creek HOA president, elected 4 consecutive terms." She extended her hand like they were at a neighborhood barbecue. "Marcus Chen, former Treasury Department analyst, currently unemployed." He shook her hand, sealing their unlikely partnership. Together, they worked through the night, Karen's organizational skills proving invaluable. She created an inventory system while Marcus identified the most valuable contents. By dawn, they'd identified patterns that suggested this vault wasn't just storage, it was funding for operations that didn't officially exist. "We need to be smart about this," Karen said, counting their take. "Too much too fast raises flags." Marcus nodded, newfound respect in his eyes. "You really do know what you're doing." But as they prepared to leave, Karen's phone buzzed with a message that made her blood run cold. "Emergency HOA meeting moved to 6 a.m. Treasury Department officials requesting access to community records. Urgent response required." They weren't just thieves anymore. They were being hunted. Karen Whitmore stood frozen in the abandoned subway tunnel, her HOA violation citations fluttering to the ground like confetti. The massive steel door before her bore the unmistakable seal of the Federal Reserve, and her flashlight beam revealed something that made her heart skip. The door was cracked open just enough for a determined middle-aged woman to squeeze through. 20 minutes earlier, she'd been chasing Mrs. Henderson's escaped poodle through the storm drains, another violation for failure to properly secure pets, when she'd stumbled into this forgotten corridor beneath downtown. Now, staring at what had to be millions in government gold, Karen felt the familiar surge of righteous indignation that had made her the most feared HOA president in Willow Creek's history. "Well, well," she muttered, adjusting her bedazzled reading glasses. "Looks like Uncle Sam's been hiding assets while raising my property taxes." The vault's interior was a cathedral of safety deposit boxes stretching into darkness. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as Karen's sensible shoes echoed against polished floors. She'd always believed the government owed her something. All those years of meticulous rule enforcement, keeping neighborhoods pristine while bureaucrats lived in luxury. This felt like cosmic justice. Her phone buzzed. A text from the HOA board about the emergency meeting she'd called for tonight. Perfect timing. She'd need witnesses for what she was about to discover. Karen approached the nearest wall of deposit boxes, noting the systematic numbering. Her organizational mind, the same one that had catalogued 847 violations last year alone, began calculating. If each box contained even modest valuables, this represented generational wealth. Wealth that could fund every community improvement she'd ever dreamed of. She tested one of the box handles, locked, naturally. But Karen had learned a thing or two about locks during her campaign to access residents' backyards for compliance inspections. Her lock-picking skills, developed through necessity and YouTube tutorials, had never failed her. The first box opened with a satisfying click. Inside, bundled cash sat beside official documents she couldn't quite read in the dim light. Her breath caught. This wasn't just money, it was evidence. Evidence of government operations the public clearly wasn't meant to know about. Mrs. Henderson's poodle can wait, Karen whispered, pulling out her phone to document everything. As HOA president, she had a duty to investigate irregularities, and this was the biggest irregularity she'd ever encountered. The second box revealed more cash, along with what appeared to be foreign currency and photographs of people she didn't recognize. Karen's pulse quickened. Whatever this vault contained, it wasn't standard Federal Reserve storage. Her flashlight beam caught something else. Fresh footprints in the dust, leading deeper into the vault. She wasn't alone down here. 3 weeks later, Karen sat in a Phoenix coffee shop, her normally pristine appearance deliberately disheveled. She'd traded her HOA blazers for oversized sunglasses and loose clothing, but old habits died hard. She'd still organized her hotel room with military precision and maintained a detailed log of her daily activities. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. They found my apartment. Moving to backup plan. Trust no one. Karen's blood ran cold. If they'd found Marcus, they were closer than expected. She'd been naive to think a few 100 miles and a different hair color would be enough. The coffee shop door chimed, and Karen's trained eye immediately cataloged the new arrival. Government haircut, off-the-rack suit, shoes that cost more than most people's car payments. He scanned the room with practiced efficiency before his gaze settled on her. Agent David Morrison approached her table with the confident stride of someone accustomed to getting answers. Ms. Whitmore, I'm with Treasury. I think we need to talk. Karen's HOA instincts kicked in. When confronted with authority, project more authority. I think you need a warrant and better manners. Morrison smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. May I sit? It's a free country, allegedly. He settled across from her, placing a manila folder on the table. You've been busy. LO president by day, cat burglar by night. It's an interesting career change. I don't know what you're talking about, Karen replied, but her eyes were drawn to the folder. The organizational part of her brain desperately wanted to know what evidence they'd compiled. The vault you accessed contains funding for operations that officially don't exist, Morrison continued. My job is to ensure that remains the case. Your job is to tell me where the money is, so we can all pretend this never happened. Karen studied his face, applying the same analytical skills she used to catch residents hiding boats in their garages or running illegal businesses from their homes. Morrison was nervous, which meant he was operating without full authorization. If these operations don't officially exist, Karen said slowly, then the money doesn't officially exist either, which means taking it isn't officially theft. Morrison's composure cracked slightly. Ms. Whitmore, you're in way over your head. Maybe, or maybe I'm exactly where I need to be. Karen leaned forward, her voice dropping to the tone she used when delivering final notices to HOA violators. See, I spent 15 years managing a community, tracking every rule violation, every financial discrepancy, every resident who thought they could get away with bending the rules. I know how organizations work when they think no one's watching. She opened the folder before Morrison could stop her. Inside were photographs of the vault, financial records, and surveillance footage showing her and Marcus entering the storm drain system. But there were also documents that made her pulse quicken. operation summaries that painted a picture of activities far beyond simple intelligence gathering. "You're not Treasury," Karen realized. "Treasury agents don't carry files about military contractors in Eastern Europe." Morrison's hand moved toward his jacket, but Karen was already standing. "Sit down, Mr. Whatever your name is, because I have copies of everything we found in that vault. And if something happens to me or my new partner, those copies go to every major news outlet in the country." The lie came so smoothly that Karen almost believed it herself. But Morrison's face told her the bluff had worked. "What do you want?" he asked. Karen smiled for the first time in weeks, feeling the familiar thrill of successful negotiation. "I want to know exactly what we stumbled into. I want guarantees about our safety. And I want a seat at whatever table makes decisions about how this gets resolved." "That's not how this works." "It is now," Karen replied, channeling every ounce of authority she'd wielded as HOA president. "Because you need something from me, which means we're negotiating. And I've been negotiating with difficult people my entire career." Morrison studied her for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. "I need to make a call." As he stepped away, Karen's own phone buzzed with a new message from Marcus. "Found something big. Meet me tonight. Location attached. And Karen, bring your HOA files. This goes deeper than we thought." Karen stared at the message, realization dawning. Her meticulous community records, her documented interactions with municipal authorities, her endless paper trails, they weren't evidence against her. They were evidence of something much larger. And suddenly, everyone wanted what she had.